continuing the faces of God, the idea being that to really know somebody, you got to spend some face-to-face time with them. How do we spend face-to-face time with God? You want to get the whole theological background, you can go to week 1 of this series today. The quick answer is that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the 4 Gospels, they are the first 4 books of the New Testament. They really paint a picture. They give us the characteristics, some of the attributes of Christ in such detail that it's almost like you're sitting down face to face. And so as we study these books, we're learning about his humanity, his divinity, the servant and sacrificial nature of Jesus, and also his kingship and authority. The hope and prayer has been that coming out of these weeks, you would feel like, man, I know him a little bit better, kind of like you had coffee with Jesus. I want to start today in Mark chapter 6, verse 41. Mark chapter 6, verse 41. It says, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he, that's Jesus, gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000. 5,000. Let's pray together, both locations. God, we thank you so much for your presence here today. We ask that you'd speak to our hearts through your word. Change us, challenge us, stretch us. In Jesus' name, amen. Somebody wrote in this week and asked why we never welcome the online campus. And so I just, for you, hey, right? I just thought, man, I'm gonna give that guy a little welcome. Welcome. And here's why, because it's better in the room. Okay, and so it's supplemental. So if you're away for work, or you're in the hospital, or you're traveling, you can't be here, we love that we have that offering, but we do just love it when we get to be in the room together. But welcome to all of the people online. There we go. That should help. Okay. I want everyone to feel like we're glad they're here. Okay, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all unique camera angles on the life and story of Christ. Interesting that all 4 Gospels record the story of the feeding of the 5,000. There is no other miracle aside from the resurrection that is recorded in all 4 Gospels, which tells us something about the story. There's something about the nature, the character, who Jesus is that each of the gospel writers wanted us to see. When you consider that Jesus walking on water is not in all 4 books, raising Lazarus from the dead is not in all 4 books, Jairus' daughter, the woman with the issue, the leper, the paralytic, the blind man, the withered hand, the exorcisms, none of them are in all 4 books, but the feeding of the 5,000 is in every gospel account. And so from a couple of different angles today, I want to give some context to the miracle. If you've been coming to church for a while, you may have heard the story of the feeding of the 5,000. If you're newer in this space, and the story is new to you, but it's an important story as we understand Christ. Matthew's camera angle of this particular story gives us this context or layup. It says, when Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. So Matthew, before Jesus feeds the 5,000, Matthew's like, hey, Jesus needed some alone time. I'm convinced that Jesus is an omnivert, okay? He's not full extrovert. He's not full introvert. He's omni. He's kind of right in the middle. So he's got that extroverted side of him where he likes being around people. He doesn't mind navigating the crowds, hanging out, connecting, teaching. He's always gracious and willing. But in this story, it says that there was a moment when Jesus had to dip away to a solitary place. I understand that. I understand the desire. Now, you might all be extroverts. I don't know, probably not. Because that would be intense. And nothing against the extroverts, but the thought of being recharged by a social setting doesn't make sense to me. I gotta come into a social setting with a full battery, or I am not fun in a social setting. So I try and come into Sundays with a pretty full battery. By the end of the third service, it's getting lower and things get said that maybe shouldn't be said, and the interactions are not as pleasant. But that's just because I gotta come in filled up. So I like the talking, I like seeing everybody in the hugs and the high fives and the conversations. But by about 1:45 in the afternoon, I gotta be by myself. I gotta get home. Ideally, I'll lay on the couch. There'll be sports on in the background, and I'll just sort of decompress. And even what happens before I get to the couch is I've gotta find a solitary place where I can compartmentalize my life and get ready to be a dad and a husband. Of course, Natasha and I, when we don't want to be husbands and wives, we just take off our rings. But when I get home, I'll come in the door, and this is kind of a daily thing. I just go to the washroom for some alone time. And the only reason, and you do it too. The only reason we choose the washroom is because it's one of the rooms that has a lock on the door. And so it's an opportunity to sort of compartmentalize my day. And I can take maybe things that stress me out. I can take maybe some of the vocational hat, and I can put it aside. I can put on the dad hat. I can put on the husband hat, and then I can go out and I can interact like a normal human. And I like to be home. It's just who I am. I don't like to be out. I'm not one of those, thank God Natasha's okay with it, because she didn't necessarily know that before we got married. But I'm just I'm a home body. It doesn't make sense to me when people are like I'm no fun. I'm just letting you know I'm no fun. So when people are like, hey man, some guys are getting together to go do this, my default answer is, that sounds like the worst. And it might be great for you, but my default is I could be home or I could be out with you. And home sounds great. And so don't take it personal. It's just how I'm wired. And I like it, and it's good, but then there are moments even at home where I just want to be away from those people. And so that's where you hide in the washroom. And you get it. I get in the washroom, I recalibrate, it's got the door that locks, it's good, I'm gathering my thoughts, I'm generally not taking a bath or doing it, I might just even have the seat down. And I'm just sitting, watching the same sports highlights I watched 7 times last night. I'm watching them again just to decompress. And I just need a little bit of a buffer before I encounter everybody. Before the kids are like, Dad, you got to see the new world I made in Minecraft, and I've got to care about that. Or Dad, you should see you'll never believe what happened in Monopoly Go with my friends today. Or Dad, do you want to hear my story? Because the answer is no, unless I recharge. I recharge alone, and then I can step into it, be like, yes, I love Minecraft. Hopefully you're an architect someday. Yes, I want to hear your story. I gotta just get set. When the kids were younger, they're a little bit older now, so they don't do this, but when they were younger, you can appreciate it. You're in the washroom, the door is locked. You might even just be sitting on the floor, just relaxing, and their fingers come under the door, and you see them moving, and it's this tension because you can see the fingers moving. You're like, they're cute fingers, but I want to break them, leave me alone. Now because they're older, they just Dad, are you in there? And I just call back, no. Or because I know that Natasha tries to sneak away, and she knows that I try to sneak away. If we don't see the other, we'll send out a search party. Guys, I don't know where your mom is. Where did she go? And we'll walk. I hope she's okay. We will stand outside that bathroom door together. I hope mom's okay, whatever she's doing. She does the same thing. I'm trying to get my minutes. She'll be like, guys, I think your dad's intestinal issues have surfaced again. There's probably a problem in there. We need to pray for him. And you can hear it happening. That's kind of the tension Jesus is managing at the start of feeding the 5,000. Because Matthew says he just needed to be alone, and Mark says the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. So Jesus had sent them out and said, guys, I want you to go, I want you to preach, I want you to teach, I want you to perform some miracles. Then Jesus is like, I need some quiet time. And the disciples come back like kids sticking their hands under the door. They're like, Jesus, we got to tell you about our day. He's like, oh, I know everything. You don't need to tell me. They also don't understand everything Jesus is carrying. I mean, John, his cousin, had just been beheaded by Herod. So there's that. That's creating a big political stir because people who are passionate and followers of John now see the government acting this way. And now they're trying to incite a revolution. And it actually says that they were trying to force Jesus to be king. So he's navigating some grief. He's navigating the weight and expectations of other people. There are a lot of things happening in the bathroom that we're sorting through. Well, people want our attention. Jesus, in his love for the disciples, says, okay, guys, we need to spend some time together. Let's go get some rest. So they went, verse 31 of Mark chapter 6, away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. So they go to get away. When they arrive on the other side, there's a welcoming committee. It says, that Jesus, he's not frustrated. He's not upset. He's not annoyed by the crowd. It says that he looked and saw them and had compassion on them. Compassion. I don't know that the word compassion always gets the weight that it deserves. We like to lump compassion with empathy, and we lump compassion with sympathy, and we lump compassion with concern. But here's where compassion is different, is that sympathy, empathy, we're talking about an emotional posture that generally when somebody says you should be more empathetic, what they mean is you should post something. You should send somebody a text that says thoughts and prayers, so sorry for you. And those things aren't bad, but compassion is when you take concern plus empathy plus sympathy plus action. Compassion requires action. Compassion is to do something to relieve the pain and suffering of another person. And so when it says that Jesus had compassion, he is looking out. So there's 5,000 men, and the way they counted things likely means that there were 5,000 households represented. So every man comes with likely a woman and some kids. And so there were, in all best estimates, somewhere between 15 and 20,000 people gathered wanting to hear from Jesus that day. And so Jesus looks out over a crowd of some 20,000 people, and the Bible says he had compassion on them. He didn't have compassion on a few of them. He didn't have compassion on the people that sat the closest. He didn't have compassion on a certain demographic. He had compassion on all of them, which means he understood that they were in pain. He understood that everyone has suffering. He understood that everybody carries weight that they don't know how to navigate and manage. And his posture was, I know what they're going through and I can do something about it. It's amazing to me that Jesus can know everything about everyone and still have compassion. Like he can know everything about everyone from beginning to the end, to the mistakes we've made in between, and he can still look and have compassion. And if he can look out over 20,000 people from various backgrounds with various experiences and various hang-ups and various addictions and various allegiances, if he can look on a group like that and be like, I have compassion on the whole dang room, then that means when he sees Experienced Church gathered together, he looks at all of us and all of our mistakes mistakes and all of our motives, all of our thoughts, all of our history, and his posture is still, I understand they're in pain. I understand they're carrying weight. I understand they've got concerns, and I can do something about it. But even more than just how he feels towards you, we can't forget that that's how Jesus feels towards our city, that he doesn't just have compassion on the Christians in the room, that he has compassion on every single person, no matter what they've done or where they've been or how far they are or how many times they've rejected him. His posture is, there's pain and I can help. Now, even more interesting to me than the idea that Jesus would have compassion on this gathering of 20,000 people is why he had compassion on the gathering of 20,000 people. Because it doesn't say Jesus saw how big the crowd was and had compassion on them. It doesn't say Jesus saw the demographics and the age breakdown and had compassion on them. It doesn't say Jesus knew how far they traveled to get there and had compassion on them. It doesn't say he understood their physical needs. He wasn't even motivated by their hunger. It says he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Do you know what motivates Jesus to compassion? Is, man, would you look at those people? They have no leader. They're wandering. They're lost. They don't know what to do next. That is what stirs up the compassionate heart of Christ when he looks over a crowd of people. Look at those people. There's a leadership crisis. Look at Calgary. There's a leadership issue. Would you look at what's going on in the world? I've got compassion for them. Why? Because they're sheep without a shepherd. They are wandering. They're vulnerable. They're lost. They don't know what to do. They need a leader. And I have to stop here for just a moment because I do believe that one of the greatest problems I see in me, and I have to be really clear here, every time I have the opportunity to hold a microphone and share with you, I'm preaching to me, and I'm just hoping that some of what God needs to speak to me gets on you. So I can't read your mail. I can read my mail, and I know this. I would rather have a cheerleader than a leader. And I'm just going to guess that I'm not the only one. That like, if we were going to be honest, you'd rather have pom-poms and backflips than somebody who wants to tell you what to do. You'd rather have the affirmation, you're amazing, go Jonathan! Or the celebration, come on, that's incredible. Give me a J. J, you got your J, you got your J. Give me an O. Oh, you got your, my name's too long to do the whole thing. But we prefer cheerleaders over leaders. What we desire is, wow, that's a great idea. You should do that. You're brilliant. Oh, great decision. I affirm that decision. Just so amazing. You're so unique. You're enough just as you are. You're just so wonderful. I'm not saying don't be an encourager. I love to be encouraged. Words of affirmation are the best. I ask my wife for them all the time. And it's kind of that clear. Hey, can you affirm me? She's like, right now? I'm like, just find something. Just anything. I am saying, even though we need encouragement, you also need a leader. And leaders will encourage you to do some things you might not want to do. And while we have an entire world that's drawn and wishes we had cheerleaders, Jesus is saying, the crisis I see that motivates me to action is a world without a leader. Now, when he says there's sheep without a shepherd, I don't know what you think about a shepherd. I think, maybe it's because it's how I think about sheep. I just think kind of cuddly. I think sort of meek. I think sort of timid. I think so, oh, that's kind of nice. Here's what Psalm 23 says about a shepherd. Psalm 23 says, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. When Jesus says they're like sheep without a shepherd, he's throwing it back even before Psalm 23. When he says they're like sheep without a shepherd, he's throwing it back to Numbers chapter 27, when Moses is about to die in the wilderness. I want you to catch the parallels here. Jesus is out with a crowd in a remote place. Moses had led the people through a remote place. And with his final prayer, Moses says, Lord, I pray that these people would have a leader so that they are not wandering like sheep without a shepherd. Jesus now sees people in a wilderness state and says, wow, they are like sheep without a shepherd. And so what is a shepherd? The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. And we like the 23rd Psalm. The 23rd Psalm makes us feel good about ourselves, makes us feel good about Jesus. I'm hoping to change that. Can you put verse 1 back up just for a second? Okay, maybe not change, challenge. Challenge your understanding of a shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Now, when all you want is a cheerleader, we have a tendency to look at the Lord as my shepherd and we think about it this way. If I lack nothing, I will let Jesus lead me. And you want to lack nothing first. Jesus, I don't want to lack. I want my relationships to be great. I want my bank account to be great. I want my job to be great. I want my mental health to be great. God, I don't want to have any needs. And we sort of wait before we trust Jesus as leader to say, hey, I don't want to lack. Don't get it mixed up. David is saying, hey, because I've allowed the Lord to be my leader, I lack nothing. I only lack nothing because I was willing to tell Jesus, hey, you can be in control, you can lead. And then the rest of the 23rd Psalm just tells us what that leadership looks like. So if you get the order right, if you actually let yourself be led, you will lack nothing. The miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 shows us that when we let Jesus lead, we can go from not having enough to having more than enough, but you have to let him lead. What does a shepherd actually do? Verse 2, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. Verse 3, he refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And you can cross-stitch it and put it on your wall. As you read it, you can almost hear a babbling brook in the background. But let me just remind you what a good shepherd does. He makes you lie down. Are you willing to be led? That means you're going to let Jesus make you do some things that you probably don't want to do. He's going to lead you because you cannot lead yourself, which means you cannot follow your emotions and you cannot follow your best and brightest ideas. You're going to let Jesus lead you. He refreshes. We like that one. He guides you, which means he keeps you moving. He says, hey, that's stupid. Don't do that. Don't go that way. Go this way. He guides you. And where does he guide you? Through the darkest valleys. I like the translation that says through the valley of the shadow of death. If you're really being led, you're going to have to allow Jesus to lead you through some things that look dark, that look painful, that look complicated, but he's my leader and he's going to guide me, and there's things he's going to make me do. We like to resist. God, I'll let you lead me, but I'm not going to let you lead me there. God, I'll let you lead me, but I don't want to be led to a spot where I can't see what's coming and I don't know what's around the next turn, but he's going to guide you. His rod and his staff, they comfort me. I love his rod and his staff. His rod means his discipline. So when you're led, it means, hey, Jesus, I'm okay with you disciplining me. I'm okay with trying to make sure the patterns and habits of my life, my disciplines, line up with the disciplines that God says are important in his word. What's the staff do? The staff was an instrument used by teachers in a posture of instruction. So I'm okay with your discipline, God. I'm okay to follow your teaching and your instruction. And he anoints you, which means he sets you apart for a purpose. He wants to lead you. He's going to make you. He's going to refresh you. He's going to guide you. He's going to discipline you. He's going to teach you. And it's not just for your benefit because you've been anointed and set apart for a greater purpose. That's actually what it means to be led. Jesus is like, man, we got all these people, no leader. And so he starts to teach, and he's teaching, and he's preaching, and he's healing, and Jesus kind of hits a bit of a zone, and the band is rolling with him, and he has an altar call, and Matthew says that he heals everybody, then he teaches some more, then he heals another group, and he teaches some more, and it goes on all day. And the disciples are in the front row, and they get to a certain point where they're like, Jesus is fairly long-winded today. I imagine the disciples in the front row sending out some signs. Jesus. I only know these signs because I've received them. There's this one, little tap of the wrist. There's Jesus, hey, it's been 11 hours of teaching. Wrap it up. I think there's probably this one. I've seen this one too. Time to stop. I've seen this one. That's the wrap it up. Now the problem is when you're really feeling it, this means you've got lots of time. So I think they're giving him this. Jesus is like, all right, another altar call. They see this. He's like, you guys want me to keep going? Okay. He launches into another story. They see this. He's like, all right, yeah, you're cutting it up today, Jesus. You're doing a great job. And so he just keeps going and going. But finally, by Mark chapter 6, verse 35, the disciples are like, we've had enough. Somebody gets up. They came to him. Jesus, this is a remote place. It's already so late. Are you kidding me? They are loving this. Yeah, but I think they're hungry. And the disciples say, send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. Jesus, there's Uber Eats will not deliver out here. This was supposed to be a service, not a conference. We're not serving meals here. And Jesus says, okay, you give them something to eat. And they freak out. That would be more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? How many loaves do you have, he asks. Go and see. And when they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. Now that's Mark's sort of wide shot on everything, but John zooms in and gives us the details on the conversation. John chapter 6, verse 5. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread for all these people to eat? He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. Okay, now there is a problem that Jesus and the disciples are facing. Here's the problem. There's a deficiency. The deficiency is they do not have enough to meet the need that's in front of them. The specific details for them are they do not have enough food to feed the crowds that are listening to the teaching. It's late. Everybody's hungry. You got 20,000 people. All the moms have used up all their fishy crackers and fruit snacks. Nobody's got nothing left. And listen, you know half those fishy crackers went to the dads. Come on, dads, you know we do that. You got anything over there? Okay, great. My wife packs 5 things, 1 for each kid and a snack for me. They got no food. And in a moment of overwhelming deficiency, it says Jesus already had in mind what he was going to do. He already knew. He already knew what he was going to do. He had it in mind. We don't know how long, but I know in the moment, he already knew what had to happen. Turn to somebody, both campuses, say, he already knew. Oh, come on, that was weak. Turn to somebody on the other side, say, he already knew. Hey, we got to get this on the inside of us. You got to understand that when you're facing a need and you don't know what to do, you serve a God who already knows what to do. He already sees the solution before you can even identify the problem. He already knew. He's not surprised by a situation. He's not caught off guard by a diagnosis. He's never shocked, thinking, man, I don't know what to do right now. Somebody feed me some ideas. He already knows what to do in every situation. And so he asks the question, not for his own sake, but for the sake of the disciples. Why? Because your deficiency, when you're willing to recognize your deficiency, it will reveal your dependency. He had to ask because he was trying to make a point. You do not have enough in and of yourself to meet this need, and I want you to come to terms with where you have been placing your dependency. It's not until you realize you don't have enough that you actually reveal where you were looking as a source in the first place. And Jesus doesn't ask Philip, how will we buy everybody dinner? He says, where? That's a very different question. Jesus had no concern that they were going to be able to do it. He just wanted a restaurant recommendation from Philip. Hey, Philip, you're from the area. I'd like to get dinner for all these people. Any options? And Philip, because of his dependency filter, doesn't even see that Jesus could possibly provide for the need in the moment. He immediately shifts into, we do not have enough. That wasn't the question, Philip, but the question I did ask has revealed where you're dependent. The questions we do wrestle with reveal where we're dependent. The deficiencies we do have reveal where we're dependent. And Philip's immediate reaction is, we don't have enough. It would take more than half a year's wages to feed all of these people, and he's calculating it all up. He's like, this is how much it costs for a burger, and these are the fries, and that's the drink, and we don't have enough money. He's trying to make a decision about a need based on what's easy, obvious, and external right in front of him. And I'm telling you, most of the needs you face are not going to be met by what's easy and obvious and external, but by a supernatural God who allows you to find yourself in situations that are so beyond your scope that he's the only option you've got. And so Philip starts thinking, man, I don't have enough money. We don't have enough silver. We don't have the resources. We're too far away. I don't have this. And when faced with deficiency, your default is to what I don't have. I don't have the job I want. I don't have the same opportunities as other people. I don't have a spouse yet. So what? Live with purpose. I don't have the home life. You don't know what it was like growing up in my house as a kid, and now I'm just a byproduct of that. Okay, let's move on though. I don't have the talent. I don't have the gift. I don't have the confidence. Do you know who isn't worried about what you don't have? Jesus. And he's in this moment of deficiency. He's running the list of everything he doesn't have, showing that his dependency is on what's around him, not on who's in front of him. He doesn't have enough. And you and I don't have enough. And a lot of the stress we take on in our lives is because we don't want to admit that I'm not enough. We don't want to admit I'm not enough. Because we have a world that's like, you're enough. You're amazing. No, you're not. And neither am I. But when you're trying to be enough for every problem in your own strength, you will be exhausted. How exhausting and stressful is it for Philip to be like, yo, I did not pack any money. And Jesus is like, dude, feed 20,000 people. That's a stressful situation. He's not enough. I wonder what your deficiency reveals about your dependency. Where do you go? Where do you lean in a moment of crisis? Do you step into relationship or away? Do you pull back? Philip is obsessed with what he doesn't have. And if we constantly obsess over what we don't have, you will constantly be stressed. But then there's Andrew. It says another of his disciples, John 6, verse 8. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? Now catch the difference between Philip and Andrew. Philip is making a list of, hey, we don't have. Andrew's like, hey, Philip, shut up. Jesus found a kid with a lunchbox. It's not much, but it's something. He's got 5 loaves and 2 fish. See, your deficiency doesn't only reveal where you're dependent. If you give it time, it'll reveal what you have. There'll be a discovery. Jesus, here's what I do have. Now, Andrew doesn't get it perfect because he says, how far will this go, honestly? How far? Hey, we've got this. I don't really know what good it is. It doesn't seem like enough, but it's something, and I want to tell you, there's something about the posture of coming to Jesus and saying, hey, I know I'm not enough, but I'm something. It doesn't feel like I have enough, but I've got something. Naturally, this looks impossible, but here's what I can give you, Jesus. It's small, but it's what, Jesus, this is all the faith I've got, but I'm going to give it to you. This is all the confidence I got, but it's just a little bit, but I've got something. I've got something, and he brings to Jesus what he does have. And you might not have enough, but I know for sure you've got something. You might have a friend. You might have some time. You might have some money. You got something. Everybody's got something. There are gifts in the room and talents in the room and ideas in the room and dreams in the room. You don't have everything, but you've got something. And a lot of times the need is so great in front of us that we're paralyzed in fear like Philip and say, there's nothing we can do. You need a little Andrew who says, hey, I don't know what you can do, Jesus, but here's what I have to offer. I can give you this. I got something. Hey, listen, before we get to the headline miracle of Jesus multiplying 5 loaves, and it's beautiful, it's like 5 plus 2. They thought it just equaled 1, like 1 lunch. Jesus is about to take 5 plus 2 and turn it into 20,000 lunches. But before we get there, there were miracles that happened before the miracle. Shout out to that kid's mom who packed him a lunch. Like, go moms. Packing a lunch is not easy. You know what? I underestimated as kids. I knew there would be school drama we'd have to deal with. I didn't know how much of it would center around lunch. I didn't know that my kids would get home and be like, you'll never believe what so-and-so had for lunch today. It was so much better than mine. We'd have these. Now, in fairness, we have a pretty tight rotation of lunches in my house. Monday is ham wraps. Tuesday is plain noodles. Wednesday is noodle wraps because we're just using the leftovers. Thursdays is maybe ham. Again, if we can, it might just be a cheese wrap. We see how far we can take it. So they're not living large on their lunch hour. But shout out to the mom who got up and did what she did every day. I'm going to pack a lunch for my kid. Shout out to the mom who had small moment, everyday, mundane faithfulness and obedience. And listen, I know we've been talking a lot about obedience, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think the horse still has some breath in him, because if we don't get obedience right, nothing will happen. We're going to keep riding that wave. Listen, if mom hadn't been faithful, if mom hadn't been consistent, if mom hadn't packed a lunch for her kid, the miracle never happens. It never gets recorded. We're not talking about it today. But because she did the thing that nobody saw, because she did the thing that nobody asked her to do, because she did the thing that she did day after day. And listen, it's her kid. You and I both know he didn't say thank you, but she did it. And because she was faithful in the little thing. Listen, every time you do the mundane, you might think, man, showing up at church is not supernatural. How do you know? Giving my tithe and the offering is not supernatural. Oh, I beg to differ. Praying, yeah, every time you pray, you're doing the things we know to do. When you do the regular, habitual, mundane things, you're laying the foundation for miracle moments. Every time you do what you know you should do, make the lunch. It might be the miracle lunch. It might be the miracle tithe. It might be the miracle prayer. It might be the time you show up and God reveals something. Make the lunch. And you got a boy who shared. That's a miracle. Well, listen, if my kids' lunches didn't get locked in a locker, it'd be gone by 10 a.m. Somehow this kid has sat through like hours upon hours of church and he's still got his whole lunch. What happens? Gets brought, gets shared. I don't know what you do have, whatever it is, share it, bring it. It might not feel like enough. I'm telling you, you have no idea. Andrew says, man, how far will this go? That's our posture. But say it with, not with doubt, but with optimism. How far will this act of obedience go? How far will showing up today go? How far is this going to go? Share it. The disciples are in the process of learning some new math. I don't know why there's old math and new math. COVID was terrible because I had to help my kids with math problems. And then coming out of it, I'm just like, I thought that was where I shone. I thought like, hey, this is my thing. I can do math. Dad, 21 divided by 7. I'm like, it's 3. No, you got to show the work. What? The work is knowing the answer, buddy. No, Dad, there's like 17 lines. We got to write the whole process down. It's going to, like there's this whole 8.5 by 11 sheet. You got to show, if I just put the answer, I'm going to get it wrong. You got to show the whole thing. Like, this is so stupid. Show the work. Hey, you know what though? I think that sometimes we know the answer to the need in our life is Jesus. But I'd like to suggest some new math. I want to show you the work that gets you from I'm not enough to he's more than enough. I'm just about to start my message. I got 5 points. You're like, is he joking? No, he's not. But we'll be quick. How do we get from not enough to more than enough? It's not enough just to know that the answer is Jesus. How do I get there? Show me the new math. See, they're about to realize that 5 plus 2 doesn't equal 7, and 5 plus 2 doesn't equal 1 lunch for 1 kid, but 5 plus 2 plus Jesus equals 20,000 lunches and leftovers. It's new math. And if you can wrap your head around the new math, now if you can wrap your heart around the new math, then anybody who came in feeling like I'm not enough, I don't have enough, that deficiency in your life, man, get some new math. It'll change everything. What's the new math? Verse 39, Mark chapter 6, then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and 50s. Get ready, take notes. I got 5 points. Here we go. Point number 1. Get in a group. Everybody needs people. You want to show the work? I'm going to show you the work that you do to go from I'm lacking, I'm not enough, I can't do it, to Christ is more than enough. People. Get around the right people. Register for an EC group. We don't do them just to fill your calendar. We do them to fill your life with the right people who can champion and encourage and strengthen you in your relationship with Christ, strengthen you in your family, bring accountability, get around the right people. He told them to get into groups. The second thing is you got to be in the right place. He said, sit down on the green grass. Don't go into a dead environment. Go where things are living. Go where things are thriving. Listen, I know your workplace might be a spiritually dead environment. That means getting around people like this that much more important. Because you can't help that dead environment get healthy if you're not in a healthy, growing, thriving environment yourself. Get around some green grass, then water the areas of your life where you need change and transformation, but get around some good people, get into the right place where it's healthy, growing, nourishing, encouraging. Listen, a lot of people wonder, man, why can't I find the right friends? Why can't I find the right partner? Why can't I find the right people? Because you're looking in terrible places. Look in the right place, you'll find the right people. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, looking up to heaven. He gave thanks and he broke it. You got to find the right people. You got to get in the right place. You got to have the right posture. That's number 3. What is that posture? It's offering. God, what I do have is yours. I don't have much, but I'm going to bring it to you. I don't have much, but I'm going to share it with you. God, I'm not anything, Lord. I'm so insufficient in myself, but I'm going to bring you what I do have. Place it in his hands. It's amazing what happens when you trust God with what you do have. How he can begin to multiply and stop hoarding. Bring it to Jesus. You don't have enough not to bring it to Jesus. That's relationships, that's finances, that's career, that's vision, that's dream, that's prayer. You don't have enough in you not to bring it to him. You need to get it in his hands. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. What's the 4th point? Purpose. You need the right people, the right place, the right posture, and you need to live with purpose. They served the needs of others. The disciples took from him and served 20,000 people. And not until it was being distributed, not until it was being shared, not until it had come into his hands and was being given back from his hand, did it actually multiply to meet the need. People, place, posture, purpose. The 5th and final point is repeat. What do? People, place, posture, purpose, repeat. People, place, posture, purpose, repeat. How do I know they kept coming back? Because it said he also divided the 2 fish among them all. There was only ever 2 fish. So it's not like Jesus blessed it and broke it and then there was a giant buffet spread and all 20,000 people came in on either side and they were filling up their own place. No. In order for this to work, the disciples it was the right people in the right place with the right posture, living with purpose, and they kept coming back to Jesus. And as they came back to Jesus, he would multiply directly out of his hand to them. Never more than 2 fish. It was never a buffet. It was always exactly what they needed in the moment that they needed it. Jesus is not going to answer with hey, here's everything you need for the rest of your life. He's going to answer with, here's what you need today, and come back tomorrow and I'll have enough for that day too. Come back the next time you're feeling deficient and I'll have enough for that moment too. And it was a habit and pattern of coming back to him over people, place, posture, purpose, repeat. We are not enough. But what do we learn about Jesus as we're having coffee with him today? He is. This story is a reminder that every need I have is met in Christ. Jesus is my help and he is my healer. Jesus is my hope and he is my defense. Jesus is my rescue and he is my source of refreshing. Jesus is my joy. Jesus Jesus is my comfort. Jesus is my strength. Jesus is my story. He's everything I need. He's everything you need. He's more than enough. He is the all-sufficient one who knows you and has compassion on you and is already working out the solution. And your deficiency will reveal where you're depending. That's Jesus. It'll reveal what you have. That's Jesus. And it'll reveal his sufficiency. And the disciples picked up 12 baskets of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000. All were fed. This isn't just about you and me. It's about the people who we work with and who are driving around in traffic right now, who live on your street, because all were fed. All were fed. Compassion on everybody. How far will it go? We have no idea until we get into the habit of people, place, posture, purpose, repeat. People, place, posture, purpose, repeat. How far? I have no idea. You know what I do know? I know that God's put in our hearts that this is not all there is. Southwest is not all there is. That there's more. How far will it go? We won't know until we put it in his hands. I'd like you to stand with me, both locations, from the front to the back. Before anybody leaves, their heads bowed and your eyes closed. Jesus, I thank you for every person in the room. God, it's impossible for me to know every need, but I know that today we walked in and there are certain areas of our lives where we feel deficient. God, we ask right now that you would just remind us that you are the all-sufficient one, that while I might not have enough, I might not be enough in and of my own strength, you are more than enough. More than enough for every marriage, more than enough for every family, more than enough for every job, more than enough for every individual, more than enough for every sickness. You are more than enough. With your heads bowed and your eyes closed, both locations, there are people in the rooms today, and you've actually never brought your life to Jesus. And so you've been living in that stressed out, I can't get ahead, I don't know what to do. You've been living in that place. Jesus brought you into these rooms to invite you into relationship and say, hey, you can bring your life to me. And if that's you and you know it's time for a change, you got to bring your life to Jesus. I'm going to count to 3. I just want you to slip your hand up really quick so I can pray with you. If that's you today, it's time to bring your life to Jesus. Here we go. 1, 2, both locations. 3, shoot your hand up. It's time to bring your life to Jesus. It's time to make a change. It's time to get things right. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Here in the Southeast and the Southwest, our campus pastors are watching for your hands. If you put your hand up, you can put it down. I'm going to ask in both rooms that you'd repeat this prayer after me. EC, let's pray it together. Say, Jesus, I need you. Come into my life. Forgive me my sins. I'm not enough without you. Today, I trust you with my future. Amen. Amen.